The title of my short reading today is Hooked on Hate. It is my particular opinion that the most destructive and most used drug in America at this particular point in time is hate. Some politicians use hate to manipulate us and distract us from the real issues facing our society. A recent political convention, for instance, was really just a giant hate fest. Hate makes us feel powerful when we feel hopeless. Hate allows us to burn hot and feel alive, at least for a short period of time. It is also my contention that everyone listening today, I include myself, has, in these difficult political times, imbibed the drug of hate, and that some of us are addicts. Hate, unfortunately, has the same effect as any other hard drug. It is destructive, addictive, and can often lead to death of the object and of hate, object of hate and the hater. And by way of a minor example, the neighbor of a friend had the 4 tires of their automobile slashed last week when they displayed a political yard sign supporting a particular candidate for president. By way of major examples of how hate destroys, in 2008, a shooter who, in quotes, hated liberals entered the Knoxville Unitarian Universalist Church on a Sunday morning and shot 2 people to death and wounded 7 others. And last week, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, high on hate and armed with an assault rifle, killed 2 demonstrators at the protests in Kenosha. So what can we do about our own addiction to hate, our own attraction to hate and addictive tendencies? How can we detox? What does sobriety look like for us? Let's imagine that there is for hate a program, much like the 12-step program for Alcoholics Anonymous. Let's call it Haters Anonymous. The first step in detoxifying is doing what we are doing here, becoming conscious of hate as a drug and its effects. And by way of footnote, I think we are in an age where we are especially susceptible. Yeats put it perfectly 100 years ago in the opening lines of his poem, The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Saying it more plainly, the overarching and sustaining narratives of Western civilization are disintegrating around us. Even the great American dream has fallen into shambles. People do not know how to be. So we have turned to the idols of our age: consumerism, celebrity, and extreme hate-filled cultish politics. The second step is in dealing with hate is taking responsibility for oneself. A most basic tenet of our UU religion is that we are the co-creators of our worlds. Life does not just happen to us. We are active participants in the creation of our own lives. If I am full of hate, negativity, and destructive impulses, it is because I have chosen that path. It is totally on me. The third step is practicing compassion for yourself and others. Face up to the fact that none of us really knows for sure what we are doing. We are often confused, befuddled, and prone to making mistakes. Understanding this will lead to to compassion, understanding even of figures that are politically distasteful. The Dalai Lama says, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy yourself, practice compassion. The fourth step is learning to love your enemies. This is a tough one. Love cannot be faked or self-generated. Love comes when it comes. Fortunately, practicing compassion and understanding are works which can often lead to genuine love. Love is the only thing that can heal our nation. Love is the only thing that can save us from our addiction to hate. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, "Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." I've only known one person who was a refugee. Matthew and his family lived for a few months out the back door and across the stair landing from Patty and me, our first year of seminary. This was in the late 1970s, and apartheid in South Africa was still a very brutal affair. Matthew was from the black township of Soweto, not very far from Johannesburg, and had left the country with his family under the cover of night with nothing but the clothes on their backs, In his homeland, Matthew had been imprisoned twice for being a radical. In prison, he experienced regular beatings, was routinely fire hosed with cold water, and was often taken from his overcrowded cell for interrogation and torture. Sometimes men were taken from their cells and never came back. Adjusting to American society was something of a monumental task for Matthew. He'd heard about McDonald's and wanted to try a Big Mac. So not realizing that there was a dine-in section, Matthew got in the drive-through lane. He did not have a car. At first, he thought people were honking at him in a friendly way, but soon realized that what he had thought was friendliness was really impatience when he took an extended period of time to study the outdoor menu. It did not take long for Matthew to realize that Americans had a restlessness that often manifests in impatient-seeming behavior. One day, in a reflective mood, Matthew opined to me that one of the reasons that American men were so impatient was because their wives were far too skinny. He further opined that a plump wife is a source of great happiness. He then told me in a comforting tone that he was sure that with time that Patty would develop a much fuller figure. The thing that was most interesting about Matthew was that in spite of all the trials he had suffered, false imprisonment, beatings, the unexplained disappearance of friends, and having to flee from a community he loved, to live in a strange new place was that I never heard one word of acrimony, hate, or judgment come from him. Here's where we talk about step 5, dealing with the drug of hate. Matthew was a person of deep faith. He was a Christian. Christianity, like all the great religions, confers upon the believer's deep sense of the rightness of their own existence. This feeling of the rightness of being does not come from having a summer home on Cape Cod, celebrity, extended vacations on the French Riviera, or being elected president of the Lions Club 2 years in a row. It comes from working one's faith. Faith is a work. It is a work that is hard because it requires one to evolve, create, and maintain one's own narrative of one's religion and of one's own life. I went through a period of angry despair some decades ago when I felt like the world would be a lot better place without religion. I'm now of a different mind. Our species needs much more good religion. We need more Catholics and Protestants, more Jews and Sikhs, more Buddhists and Muslims, more religious atheists and New Age believers, and a whole lot more Unitarian Universalists who are working their faiths to overcome the ennui and nihilism of this age, which has led to stark political division, fundamentalism, hatred, and bloodshed. Working one's faith is our first step in dealing with addiction to hate. There's an old Franny Crosby hymn titled, "Faith is the victory that overcomes the world." Fanny was right. Faith is the victory that helps us to overcome our hate. Faith is the victory that will help us to love those with whom we are in stark political disagreement. And it is my opinion that if it will be people of all faiths working together to heal our world. If you work your faith will work for you and the whole world. Working your faith is like pulling on a thread. It will eventually unravel everything you thought you knew was right, but it will lead you to your essential, eternal, indestructible, transcending soul. Hate is not possible there. One of the ways that Matthew worked his faith was to dance. For a Methodist from North Dakota, it was a bit unsettling. In the middle of a conversation, Matthew would often spontaneously rise from his chair and dance. He said it was a way of praying. A couple of times, Matthew asked me to join him in dance. I informed him I couldn't, that I was a Protestant and therefore suspicious of pleasant activities. So today, to honor Matthew and all migrants and refugees and the lesson they can teach us, I have selected a song from South Africa that originated in the Black townships during the darkest days of apartheid and is sung by Mama Africa, Miriam Makeba, who died in 2008. The song is titled Khawuleza and is sung in Zulu. So, Lisa, if you would run that.
Khawuleza is a South African song. It comes from the townships, locations, reservations, whichever, near the cities of South Africa. where all the black South Africans live. The children shout from the streets as they see police cars coming to raid their homes for one thing or another. They say, "Kauleza, mama," which simply means, "Hurry, mama. Please, please don't let them catch you." Kauleza, mama, kauleza, mama, kauleza, mama, kauleza, mama, kauleza, mama, sheshi sabo.